The flyers appeared on 3 lampposts in my street 2 weeks ago. They had a lady talking to me now, and she had a different approach to all the others. She showed me her badge, her gun, photos of her family, all the things I would want to see to befriend me so that I would tell the truth. All I've done is tell the truth, but here I am telling the same story I told my parents, Tim's parents, the chief of police, and the town doctor. I wondered if she already knew this given her job. Being a teenager, I couldn't help but think she was too pretty to be doing the job she was doing. Her smile drew me in, which I was all a part of her plan. She never wrote anything down, just listened and went along with me.
Take me through it,
She said.
in your own words. No one else is around, so feel free to recount everything as if you won't get in trouble. You know that, right? You're not going to get into trouble. This isn't your fault.
I know that. Where was I?
The flyers.
Right, the flyers. White paper, no photos, no name, 3 typed words and a phone number, all held up on the lamppost by 4 staples. Lost wallet, reward, 425-555-7231. 2 weeks ago, on our walk home from the bus stop, we saw them. A bus stop is about 3 blocks from our street, and as Tim spotted one as soon as we passed for the first lamppost. Nothing ever changes in this town, and the funny thing is, no one is annoyed by that. Disturbances are known in advance and practically measured against a calendar. Anytime something is up, the town is probably already there and participating in the commotion. The whole town supports the football team or attends the rallies whenever they're scheduled, because they offer excitement. They draw a crowd. Hell, the police only attend because they know someone in the team and they're demonstrating their support, not their authority. The house fire that started in Mrs. Jackson's kitchen last winter drew people out of their houses, not to gawk, mind you, to help. There were people hosing the house down or throwing buckets of water way before the fire brigade showed up. The fire was practically out when they turned up, and the final act of extinguishment was largely ceremonial. They didn't stop the crowd cheering them on like they saved the day. You could see it in the eyes of some of the firefighters as though they looked on the crowd applauding and they viewed it as some sort of participation ribbon you give a child at a school athletics carnival. Everyone played their part, and those who didn't like it moved. Most people were happy with this routine, and this routine was happy shaping its people. People rarely moved here. We were all born here. We operate as a collective, and it works. No changes, no surprises, no problems. The walk home was like every other day I could recall. The same barking dogs, the same neighbors watching and waving out their window, the same best friend walking by my side. Tim and I had been friends and next-door neighbors since grade school. We did everything together, and our walk home from school was no different. We played the same junior football team, took all the same classes, and laughed at the same crappy jokes. When I think back, everyone said we looked alike and inferred from our behaviors that we acted more like brothers than friends. It's a stereotype we embraced and took pleasure in. We were 2 blocks away from home, and I knew exactly what Tim was going to ask before he asked it. Did you finish your geometry homework in study period? He knew the answer, and my response, yet I gave them away. I waited 2 seconds so the barking dog number 1 could start his protection detail, which would continue for the next 30 yards. Maybe, I replied. You know you did. I'm gonna need that off of you, he said. Depends. Did you finish the English homework? I asked. I knew the answer, but I could never say I didn't like playing my part. The dog 1 quieted down, and having completed its duty, we picked up where we left off. Look, we have 20 minutes to get homework out of the way. I'll copy yours, you'll copy mine, and the teachers will be happy. Then we can go down to the river. I told the guys we're going down and we're all gonna come try the swing. Even after what happened? I asked. We just won't pull back as far. It'll be safe, I promise, Tim replied. Dog 2, Holly, took up her position leaning against the fence for a pat. Tim called her a cuddle slut, as if a burglar would try to rob Miss Kaylee's house. The only danger he'd be in is being licked to death. I tried telling him the dog was friendly and just wanted to play. According to Tim, dogs are meant to protect their property, not welcome people into it. And as you can see, it didn't stop me from reaching over and giving Holly a scratch behind the ears. She knew me, and when we passed, I kind of think she looked forward to it just as much as I do, to be honest. Tim relented and gave her a pat after I did, just like he always did. I was worried about the swing, you know? I was worried it wasn't safe. We didn't put it there. The lady just watched me and didn't say anything, so I continued. Holly followed along the borderline, hopping for the second pat, but I didn't want to change up the routine. In 10 more yards, Mrs. Patterson was going to wave, and I'm going to wave back. She's 65, and she's been waving to me ever since I can remember.
Tell me about the swing.
Oh right, the swing. There are 2 main trees at our swimming hole, one laying across the river and another standing next to it. My father told me that a storm had pushed one of them over, but held the roots in the ground, creating the perfect natural bridge for diving. The other, which wasn't affected by the storm, grew straight towards the sky. You have to understand that both of these trees were huge. My father thinks that they were sprouted at the same time over 50 years ago. The fallen tree almost touched the other side of the bank, and people would walk out and dive into the deep pools below. The tree was just there. It was too wide to climb, but kids dreamed of tying a rope to the branches and making a swing. 2 weeks ago, it looked how I described it. 2 weeks ago, when Tim and I went for a swim, the lowest branch had a rope tied to it. The rope was tied off to a stick buried in the ground, and we wasted no time digging it up and testing it out. We sure wondered how it got up there, but right then, we didn't care. We swung out further and further before I got the bright idea to alter the launch pad. Being the geometry whiz, I worked out that if we pulled back the rope around the tall tree and climbed one of the shorter trees, we could swing down and would launch us higher as we released the rope. Of course, we had to grip the rope higher, and took the 2 of us to get it to the new launch pad, but damn, the adrenaline we got from it was too good. We got so high. I mean high. Tim was able to land a double backflip at one point, and land feet first into the water. Being boys, we had to outdo each other. Dog 3 didn't bark. We didn't want pats or attention. It watched us like we were intruders. The thing knew us, but it always tracked us along as we walked past its property. No sound, but we knew it was there because of the shadows. Luckily, it was the last dog, but I always wished Holly was the last dog we saw on our walk home. We had a block until we reached our street. 2 weeks ago, we were 25 minutes from finishing our homework and changing into swimming gear. 25 measly minutes. Where was I?
You launched yourself really high.
Oh, yeah. So I launched myself, and as soon as my feet left the branch, I knew I was in trouble. The angles were all wrong. I should have held onto the rope and swung back, but I panicked and thought I'd crash into the bank or break something, so I released my grip at the apex of the incline, hoping for the best. No fancy flips or dives. I was only concerned with a boring pencil drop. I looked down briefly and pointed my toes downwards. My hands pointed down the side of my body, and at the last second possible, I looked up at the sky to brace myself. Tim said he could see it as well, but it didn't work out until I let go of the rope. He held his breath and went rigid as I came down. I didn't see how close I came, but Tim said I was less than a bee's dick away from landing on a fallen tree. I felt the bark barely make contact with my skin as my feet hit the water. I was under before I could process the feeling, and I reached up. I felt my chin, hoping it was still there. I surfaced and gasped for air. Tim had raced along the fallen tree to help me out of the water. Tim had raced along the fallen tree to help pull me out of the water. "That was fucking close, you idiot," he said. "You could have died." I looked down at my body for signs where the tree had struck me. The extra branch pushed me too far. I looked back on the rope, which was swinging by itself, waiting for us to have another go. "Let's not go from that branch again," I said, laughing. "Yeah, we'll have to keep testing to find the perfect spot." "But we could land on the fallen tree and break our necks," I replied. "Not if we're careful," Tim said. I knew better.
Geometry class.
That's the first question you've asked.
It wasn't a question.
Kinda was.
No, it was an observation.
Anyway, yes, geometry class. We found our maximum launching distance, but knowing Tim, he'd want to test the boundaries some more. He was always a risk taker like that. Let's get back to the bus stop and the flyer. Right, so Tim and I had just hit our street, and he pointed out the first flyer. This was out of the ordinary, and we stopped to read it. "Whose wallet do you think it is?" he asked. "How should I know? There's no name on the flyer," I replied. We kept walking. As you know, our street is pretty long, and we had a while to walk until we got to our houses. I was the first to see the second flyer. It wasn't facing us, like the first one was, and I caught it, because if I'm being totally honest, I was looking out for it.
Why?
It wasn't part of the routine. This is a small town. If someone we knew lost a wallet, we would have heard about it at school. Everyone knows everyone, and everyone talks about everyone. It's that simple. And that was a question.
I guess it was. Please continue.
Right, so I noticed the second flyer, but I didn't say anything. We just kept walking and talking about the river and meeting up with the boys in just over 20 minutes. That's when we came to Mrs. Jenkins' place. He hates it when people walk on his lawn. I mean, hates it. I've seen him cuss out old ladies for stepping on a blade of his couch. He's had a go at us before, and unless you're in the mood for a laugh, we dropped the bitumen for sanity's sake. Tim moved first. I could see Mr. Jenkins watching from his window, probably hoping we'd hop the curb and dance a jig on his manicured grass, just so he could lose his shit. He was weird like that. My mother said Mr. Jenkins liked attention, which is why he fixated himself on this nature strip. There was nothing honestly special about it. Hell, he didn't even mow it. If he really cared, wouldn't he mow it himself?
Your mother is a smart lady.
I know.
What happened next? Take me through it.
Another question. I'm on a roll.
You've piqued my interest.
You're the first one to ask me questions this way.
I work differently.
Right. So, Mr. Jenkins' place, like I said, and we were about to move back onto the nature strip when, for some reason, I looked at the storm drain. And as you can see, it's just on the edge of Mr. Jenkins' place. I don't really know why, but I looked down the drain and there it was.
The wallet?
Yep, the wallet. Just like in the picture. I stopped and stared at it. Thinking about it stopped me in my tracks, and the memory flooded back.
Keep talking.
Holy shit, I said. What? Tim asked, stopping to see what I had stopped. That's the wallet, I pointed. He looked down into the drain and saw it too. Reckon that's why the guy posted the flyers on our street? He lost it here? I asked. Musta, Tim replied. Let's get it and collect that reward. Before I could stop him, Tim was lying on the road with his arm down the grate trying to reach for the wallet. How much is the reward? He asked, stretching his arm. The flyer didn't say, it just said reward, I told him. I can't reach it, he said, standing up.
Why couldn't he reach it?
She just stared at me, waiting for me to continue, but I wasn't interested. The drain scared me, and I think she knew it. Why are we doing this?
Continue.
It was down too far, just out of arm's reach. Only by less than an inch, but it may as well have been a mile. Help me lift the grate, Tim said. He bent over and started pulling in the iron storm drain. Years of muck and filth had practically cemented the thing in place. It took both of us straining with all of our might to lift it. Did you know those grates are on hinges?
Yes.
I didn't. If I knew that, we wouldn't have pulled it the way we did. We wasted so much energy trying to pull the hinge side when we could have just pulled it from the other end. But we got it open, and the wallet was now within reach. Apart from the wallet, the drain was clear. Some crap on the edges around the grate, but apart from that, the drain was pristine, almost like someone kept it clean.
Perhaps it was the water.
Water?
The purpose of the drain is to regulate water flow. That would have kept it clean.
You're the only one who kept the questions to a minimum.
Only one what?
The only investigator.
I told you I work differently.
Well, you're probably right. The water kept it clean. Where was I?
Tim lay down again to get the wallet. I have another question.
Shoot.
Why are you afraid?
What gives you that impression?
You've paused.
Tim lay down and reached into the drain. We both thought by removing the obstacle he'd be able to easily reach the wallet, but it wasn't so. It was just out of reach, he said, standing up. I'm jumping in to get it. Tim brushed the road debris off his shirt and jumped into the open drain. I stood at the edge, watching him bend down and pick up the wallet. His head ducked beneath the road for, I think, less than 2 seconds before he popped back up. Got it. I wonder who it belongs to and how much the reward... The lady waited for me to continue. I fixed on the spot, staring into the distance. 1 minute he was there, and the next Tim was gone. I was right there. Right fucking there. It was like the floor dropped out beneath him and he was gone. I swear to you, I saw an arm grab his ankle and drag him down and back into the drain. I screamed. I screamed like a cartoon lady being robbed. Tim vanished before my eyes, wallet and all. 1 minute he was holding up his prize as if he were expecting his reward, and the next, gone.
What did it look like?
What did what look like?
The arm.
It looked like an arm.
Let me put it another way. Did it look human?
I was standing still. The lady kept her patience and looked past me over my shoulder. How did you know?
Call it a hunch.
No, it didn't look human. It looked like an arm, yes, but human, no. It was the wrong color.
What happened next?
I screamed some more. Just like the fire at the Jacksons, neighbors raced out of their house at the sound of something out of the ordinary. I was screaming Tim's name and pointing at the storm drain. People raced up to me trying to work out what was happening. I was screaming one monotonous tone. I never stopped pointing at the drain. No one knew what was going on until Mrs. Patterson arrived and asked people where Tim was. I kept pointing at the drain. Something grabbed him, I said. He was there, and then it wasn't long before the police arrived, then the fire department, then the paramedics. I was still screaming. Nothing made sense. The first officer jumped into the drain and shone his torch down the drain hole. "There's nothing down here," he said. "It's not the biggest hole. Are you sure?" It wasn't long before my mother was by my side telling me she'd call my father to come home from work.
And that's when all the questions started.
Yeah, for 2 days I answered questions about that day. For 2 days I've answered questions about the river, our plans, our homework, and that wallet.
You said there were 3 flyers?
Yes, there were 3.
Where was the 3rd one?
I pointed. That way. I saw it when my mother walked me home to drop off my backpack. It was outside the house.
Can we move forward now?
Why?
I want to talk about the drain some more.
Why?
What do you think?
Because of what I saw? The police had forensics units search the drain, cameras, teams of people scoured the sewer system for him, and nothing. He was gone. Nothing, not a trace.
Can we move forward?
Why?
Why are you not moving?
Why do you want me to?
Why don't you want to move?
Why can't you find him? Don't all the sewers lead to the same place?
Yes, they do.
Well, I saw it. I saw an arm reach out and grab Tim's ankle. It yanked him down into the drain and through the hole. I saw it and no one believes me. I saw something grab my friend and drag him away. We faced off, waiting for the other to bridge the silence. I still wasn't moving and she stared at me, waiting for me to break.
Why didn't you want to speak to me before?
What good would it do? You're just another person in a long list.
Huh?
You're just another person to listen and not believe me.
But I do believe you. I'm here, right? I'm here beside you. You're not alone. What changed?
You ask a lot of questions now.
Then perhaps you should answer them.
Fair enough. What changed is that no one could find the wallet. Police, the firemen, the paramedics, the neighbors, even my father looked and no one could find the wallet.
But what changed?
I had time off from school, other flyers on street lamps with information about Tim. The police took down one of the flyers for analysis and replaced it with a crop shot of Tim. And if you look at it, you can see my arm draped over his shoulder. His parents went on the news appealing to the safe return, but you already know all that. It's the reason you're here.
That's right.
Someone who I don't know said it would be best if I returned to school. So I did. I sat in geometry class and phoned it in. The only people who asked me questions were students. It was like I was invisible to the teachers. No one wanted my opinions or answers. My routine practically went back out the door. I was marked present in the role, but for all intents and purposes, I was absent. Wake up, breakfast, buses to school, lessons, bus home, dinner, then sleep. Repeat. That was until yesterday.
When you called me.
When I called you. Yesterday I was walking home as usual. Nothing ever changes in this town. The funny thing is, no one is annoyed by that. A boy goes missing, but things remain the same. Only his parents and me seem to notice or care.
You were walking home?
Yes, I was walking home and the routine was the same. Dogs barking, dog needs pats, dogs watching me, neighbors waving. It was a replica of that day and the days before it. The flyers were still up.
And then?
And then I came to Mrs. Jenkins' place. As usual, I walked off the curb onto the street. Fuck his grass and fuck his tirades. I don't need shit like that in my life. I could see him watching me from his window. Everything was going on. That old coot was more interested in who was stepping on his grass than the boy who went missing just off his property. Anyway, I looked at the grate and for some reason I looked down. I had avoided it since I was forced back to school, but yesterday something made me look inside.
And what did you see?
We started walking again. Having her near me didn't scare me anymore. Having her here made me feel safe. I walked up to the drain and pointed inside. That's what I saw. I saw it, and called you so we could talk. She took a few steps and peered through the grate.
Holy shit.
Holy shit is right. That's the fucking wallet right there. Right where Tim jumped in and picked it up. Right where the umpteenth hundred people searched for it and never found it. Right where no one believed me it was. Right where I said it was, so I called you. Only you, so you could see it for yourself. Now, you tell me how no one else believes it is real. It's right there, in front of your eyes. Tell me how something like witches shouldn't be there, as you mentioned, water washed everything away, is on proud display. What happened 2 days ago?
There was a storm.
That's right. And can you tell me what kind of storm it was?
A big one. It lasted for 3 hours. Thunder, lightning, pouring rain, high winds, the works.
Right. So if there was a storm, and we can agree that water fell from the sky, pooled and drained right through here, can you explain to me how this wallet is sitting here, pristine and dry in the exact same place I saw it 2 weeks ago? Can you explain to me how this wallet, the one on the flyers, is sitting in the same spot where my friend picked it up and held it up to show me? Can you explain to me how this wallet is in the same fucking spot? She just stared at me, not daring to move. I watched her watch the wallet. I watched her look back at me, back to the wallet, then back at me.
Help me open the grate.
No fucking way.
It's okay. I'm armed and nothing's going to happen. This is the first piece of evidence. We can use it to find him. Help me open the grate. The owner of the wallet can potentially assist our investigation.
I stood my ground. I was not helping her, FBI or not. If she wanted the wallet, she was on her own. I'm not doing that.
Stand back then.
She bent over and opened the grate a lot easier than Tim and I did. One movement and it was open. I realized she wasn't kidding when she said she understood the mechanics of a storm drain.
I'm going to get the wallet.
You shouldn't. I stood it back a step. It was enough for me already to be safely out of arm's reach, but just enough to see inside.
It's alright, look.
She lay down flat on the road and reached down to retrieve it. Her arm stretched as far as it would go, but nothing. Like Tim, she grabbed the air. Like Tim, she stood up and brushed the dirt and debris from the gutter.
I'm getting in.
I wouldn't do that. Ignoring me, she unflicked the leather strap of her gun, then lowered herself inside the drain. She practically was the same height as Tim and stood half in, half out of the drain. She bent down and picked up the wallet, showing it to me. She opened it and looked inside.
It's empty.
Please get out now.
I have another question.
Get out of there.
One thing I don't understand.
Please get out of there. She turned and looked at the drain pipe. The wallet was still being held up in her hand as she bent over to inspect the cavity.
This is a small pipe. How did Tim sit down here?
Get out of there and I'll tell you.
Alright, I'm getting out.
She put her hands on the edge of the drain, went to pull herself up, and I saw it again. An arm, not a human arm, reached out of the drain hole and grabbed her ankle. Her eyes went wide like Tim's. She dropped suddenly like Tim, and then she was gone, dragged into the pipe. She was gone, like Tim. I heard her gun go off, but then it stopped. That's why I screamed again. You see, nothing ever changes in this town.